And here we go. It is Thursday, final day of March. We move into April. Fiesta has begun. Good morning, Tracy Bogert. First person we see in here on this Thursday. First day of Fiesta. Wes Perkins, good morning. Lucinda Sullivan, good morning. Welcome in. My voice is a little better. Actually, a lot better from when it hit rock bottom. Yeah. That was a tough loss for the Spurs. And now with 6 to play, even though the Lakers are free falling, you wonder if that one missed shot is going to come back to haunt them. We shall see. All right. I'm going to mute for a moment. All right. I'll make sure Jeremy KOLOK sees that. Lucinda, I can always use some Barry Manilow. Muting for a second because of our evil Facebook overlords. Anthony Del Toro, Steve Duraco, welcome in.
Now, Chris Duel.
Oh my goodness gracious. What a 24 hours of sports it has been, and we will cover it all in anticipation of the next 24 hours of sports. It is a throwback Thursday. It is the final Thursday of the month. It is March 31st. In San Antonio, it is the first day of Fiesta. And early in the evening yesterday, among other things, a bombshell in the National Football League. Not long after Tom Brady returns from his retirement at quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Bruce Arians will no longer be the head coach. He will move into the front office. So much to react there about Valero Texas Open underway today. We've got a tough Spurs loss last night at the buzzer. A layup from Keldon Johnson rims out, and the Spurs lose by 1 to the Memphis Grizzlies, 112-111. We'll talk everything March Madness, NBA, Spurs, NFL, big soccer news as well. My goodness, so much going on. It is the Chris Duel Show with Shannon, Salty Sweeney, and the hardest working man in radio, Jeremy KOLOK. Shannon, how are you on this final day of March?
I'm easing into it, sir, because as we know, tomorrow, April 1st, there's going to be a lot of headlines out there that are not necessarily going to be true. And you were the first one to cue me in to the Bruce Arians retirement, moving to the front office news last night. And my immediate thought was, are we getting in early on some April foolishness? But no, it is very much a true story. I'm still, I think, processing. Obviously, we've already this morning, there's lots of conspiracies out there as to why it went down the way it did. The date, given we're officially in the new league year, Tom Brady's back. There's the former offensive lineman who previously retired before Tom Brady, sent out a GIF over his social media pages, kind of like, I knew it was happening. So weird stuff. The NFL continues to make headlines during the offseason, and it's great for you and I. We love it.
Yeah. Well, but a big question, is it great for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with, and again, we'll explore some of these conspiracy theories. And my first thought, Shannon, was, and again, I'm just wondering out loud, there's no indication of this, but Bruce Arians has had 3 separate bouts with cancer in his life and in his NFL career and in his not too distant past. He's had prostate cancer. He's had kidney cancer. He's lost part of a kidney as a result, and he had nasal cancer. They found cancerous polyps in his nose. 3 separate cancer issues. So my first thought was, and continues to be, as I wonder, might he have a health problem? Might he have had a recurrence of cancer? God forbid, and we certainly hope not. But I just, Shannon, yesterday, I watched an interview with Bruce Arians talking about how ecstatic he was. And obviously he's in the front office now, so he's still going to be ecstatic. But he was talking about how ecstatic he was that Tom Brady chose to come out of retirement. He even mentioned even throughout that 40-day retirement, he was in constant communication with Brady, texting him, saying, hey, how you doing? And at one point, Brady said, I'm in Paris with my family. Arians related this. They said, well, I guess we can't go play golf this week then. So who knows? And again, Shannon, why March 31st? Why did you wait this long? And again, as you bring up, good thing he didn't do this tomorrow. And by the way, it was March 30th yesterday. Today's March 31st. But had he waited until Friday, it would have been April Fool's Day. And a lot of people would have been wondering what the heck was going on. But just, of all the NFL developments, Shannon, Bruce Arians leaving as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would have believed certainly Mike McCarthy stepping down, and I would have kind of hoped for it before something like this. This is, to me, was one of the more unlikely possibilities to come down in the NFL, and there, especially with Brady coming back. And therefore, I just think it's a huge bombshell of a story in the NFL.
Yeah, and maybe there were some tea leaves here and there. Prior to being with the Buccaneers, he was with the Arizona Cardinals, and when that tenure came to an end, it kind of was the word that he wasn't going to come back to coaching, that he was going to go ahead and call it quits. And he finds himself in Tampa Bay 2 years later, adds Tom Brady to the roster, and then wins the Super Bowl. And then the thought kind of was, well, if I don't retire this year, it's going to be after the next year, let's see if we can run it back. They didn't, but then to not go ahead and retire after the season, I think is where that question lies of, okay, well, when was the change of heart? Because you've had so much time in between the Tampa Bay season ending and this new kind of NFL calendar year beginning. And then the coaches photo, we talked about Mike McCarthy absent from that photo because he decided that he's not going to go to those meetings. He's going to do his due diligence, as we hear a lot from the Cowboys organization, to go scouting. And then talked about Matt Rule, who is in the photo, looking like a kid who doesn't want to be taking photos. And of course, Bill Belichick, who is there, but is not in that photo because that is a tradition of his, but also not in that photo was one Bruce Arians. And I wasn't sure at the time if that was because he was either not there, just not willing to be in the picture. But I believe we now know that this was something that we was known a couple days before the announcement was made.
And, if you knew this was coming, if you knew Bruce Arians was going to move into the front office and your new head coach, and he has been promoted, Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, promoted to head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, why wouldn't you have started him earlier? Why didn't you send him to that coach's meeting? Have him begin to meet the rest of the fraternity, let him begin his coaching career among other peers, let him pick the brains of those other coaches at that coaching conclave. It's just all so weird, Shannon. And again, it's still a relatively new story. It didn't break until after sundown last night. I was in the Spurs Net Center working the Spurs game last night when this story broke. So everybody's still processing it. I imagine, now when the sun comes up in a little over an hour and a new day begins, that, people around the NFL, your hardcore NFL reporters, are going to do what they can to kind of sift through all of the information and try to figure out what caused this retirement and at this time, which is so unusual. When I did sports history yesterday or 2 days ago, because I was out yesterday, and thanks to Andy Everett and you, Shannon, and Jeremy for holding the fort down. But 2 days ago, I mentioned that this day in sports history, Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson parted ways. And it was so weird for the Cowboys to make a coaching move and a coaching change, and for a coach to step down in late March, even all those years ago, and here now, completely different circumstances, obviously, but Bruce Arians does the same thing. I want to check in with Jeremy KOLOK, a huge NFL guy as well. Jeremy, how surprised are you by this move, and why do you think Bruce Arians and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers chose to do that at this point?
Well, first of all, it seems so often that breaking news comes down right when we go off the air, like so often. So I want to thank Bruce Arians for at least putting this news out in the evening time to give us the time to talk about it and react to it, not a full 24 hours later. But I was very surprised because the first thing I thought about was, I guess, for a full month, for that time period where Tom Brady was quote unquote retiring after that first initial report, it was all the chatter was about the future of the Bucs and what they would look like without Tom Brady, obviously. And the scenario was going to be Bruce Arians without his quarterback, right? Without his Hall of Famer quarterback, with a question mark at that position. And now we have Tom Brady coming back, and he's not going to have his coach. And obviously, Todd Bowles is an experienced football coach and an NFL journeyman. Kind of, he's been around, and I'm sure he's very, I'm sure he has a good relationship with Mr. Brady. But I just think that's interesting that, initially Brady wasn't going to come back, and now he comes back, and who knows what he knew, obviously, before any of us knew anything. But now he comes back, and he doesn't have his head coach.
It's amazing. And speaking of conspiracy theories, Shannon, one of the first things that I thought of, it's not really a conspiracy theory, but so Todd Bowles is elevated as head coach. He is defensive coordinator. Obviously, Bruce Arians was an offensive-minded coach and was considered by many a quarterback whisperer. Now, first of all, Todd Bowles is African-American, which is excellent, that the NFL gets more representation, as it should, with an African-American head coach. Todd Bowles certainly immensely qualified for this. But I wonder, whoever is named offensive coordinator, Shannon, if in fact the de facto offensive coordinator really is Tom Brady. And if I were the Glazier family, and if I were Todd Bowles now, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and if I were Bruce Arians now in the front office of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'd just make it official. Our offensive coordinator, and make some history. Our offensive coordinator is Tom Brady. He's the GOAT. He's Tom Brady. Whatever he says goes. We go as far as Tom Brady takes us. He's the boss. He's the CEO of the offense. Just do it. Just make it official. Tom Brady, you're the offensive coordinator. And oh, by the way, Tom Brady, you'll be calling those plays on the field at quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, if it wasn't already Tampa Bay, it's probably going to be even more of that this coming season. We know he left the Patriots because, he wasn't as involved as he would have liked to have been, for as much as he already was. And that was part of the joy of him coming down to Tampa and having that relationship with a guy like Bruce Arians. And you wonder if there is maybe some deterioration between Super Bowl year and last year, that Tom Brady was trying to say, look what I did with the Super Bowl, and let me be that much more involved. And also, the way he retired, right? There was the leak that he was retiring, and then a few days later he officially made the announcement. It just didn't feel like after this career and the way and how he uses social media so often and the creativeness, that just didn't seem like the right fit for him, for that to be the way that went down, for him to now be back and Bruce leaving. You wonder if part of it was, okay, I'm coming back, but I want it under these circumstances, and he kind of played his hand in that retirement. I don't know that they'll officially name him as the OC, but I would not be surprised if it is Tom Brady, the OC. Kind of like how head coaches do sometimes, right? They have an OC in place, but they're the ones holding the card.
Mhm.
They're the ones calling the plays. Tom Brady's just going to need one of those bigger wristbands on him to be able to have all of them in front of him at once.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody ever deserved it to just get that consideration and make him the official offensive coordinator. Of course, obviously Byron Leftwich certainly has that title, and you don't want to take that away
It's a
from
title.
him. But right, but I mean, I remember back in the Tom Landry era, and when the Cowboys won Super Bowl VI, Dan Reeves was a player coach. Tom Landry realized Dan Reeves was a pretty darn good, knowledgeable, cerebral player. And I think back in those days, Dan Reeves, I think he was assistant coach. I don't think there was a specific running backs coach or any. I think he was just one of Landry's assistants at that time, and it kind of worked out. We will talk all angles of this Bruce Arians retirement. In fact, coming up, we'll let you know what our poll question is. Our poll question is certainly inspired by the retirement of, and I say retirement, that's wrong, by the moving up to the front office, leaving the head coaching job, because officially Bruce Arians is moving into the front office of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So my mistake on the retirement term. We'll talk about that. Spurs, 6 games left to play. The ball hits the rim last night on a Keldon Johnson hotly contested drive to the basket and layup, but it rims out. Will that one bounce of the basketball come back to haunt them within the next 6 games? We'll talk about that. John Gruden. We've got some John Gruden news involving what's going on with him in Las Vegas. Of course, he's no longer the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders after things went really, really bad last year. So everything March Madness, everything NFL, Valero Texas Open underway. In San Antonio, Fiesta is underway. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Everything popping in the world of sports. Coming up, the high five play of the day. Shannon's salty shakedown just after 7:30. James Allen from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Bruce Arians probably gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His thoughts on the sudden retirement, or there I go again. I got to get that R word out of my mouth. Get that R word out of your mouth. Thank you, Will Smith. Don't slap me, Will Smith. Oh, Chris Rock took the stage last night in Boston. Chris Rock, we got some updates on Chris Rock. Now, his first comedy stage appearance since the Oscars altercation. We'll get into that. Andy Everett. We'll talk a lot of Valero Texas Open with Andy, who joins us at 8:35. And again, a thanks to Andy for joining Shannon and Jeremy in my absence without a voice yesterday morning. Lots coming at you. Thanks for hanging out with us all morning long. We're with you till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. Forgot my microphone was muted. I got to make a quick run to my vehicle where I have iced tea. I'll be back in a sec. Lots more coming at you. Give you some Jeremy KOLOK for your viewing pleasure. I'll be back in about 2 minutes. All right. As Jeremy says, Taro, very tough loss for the Spurs. I got to look at now, and I know the Lakers. See if I probably don't have time to do this in the next few minutes, but I know the Lakers will not have LeBron against Utah tonight. Pull up the Lakers' final schedule. So Spurs have 6 left, 2 of which are against Portland. The Lakers are at Utah. They face New Orleans, Denver, at Phoenix, at Golden State, OKC, that's a win, and then at Denver. Now, on paper, those are all tough, but remember, we are getting late in the season. So let me pull up the Spurs schedule, which includes 2 games against Portland. Now, New Orleans also has 2 games against Portland, so that's a wash. So Spurs are 2 against Portland, at Denver, same as the Lakers, at Minnesota, tough this year. Minnesota's good this year. Home against Golden State, and at Dallas. And the Pelicans, I'm going to run out of time, so I'll get to them later. So we are 2 games behind the Pelicans. And both teams have Portland twice. So that means only, I'm assuming that's a wash. Here we come.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through.
$707-9760.
Let's Go Crazy by Prince. It's funny, I was just talking about Prince on 1200 WOAI's morning news earlier this morning, because this is the first day of Fiesta in San Antonio. And since the pandemic, Fiesta just hasn't been Fiesta in a relatively normal way. So I said, you know, in the words of Prince, we're going to party like it's 1999. And the Soundscape stylist over at OAI, Peter G., played 1999 by Prince. That is the second Prince song I've heard this morning, Jeremy KOLOK. I can't get enough Prince. So that's very, very good. Welcome in. It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon, Salty, Sweeney on this final day of March, a throwback Thursday, March 31st. We are reacting and spent a lot of time in the first half hour reacting to the announcement last night that Bruce Arians will be stepping aside as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He will move into the front office. Defensive coordinator Todd Bowles will now be the head coach, even though Byron Leftwich is officially the offensive coordinator. Tom Brady, and we'll get into that more. You know, how does Tom Brady feel? And did Tom Brady have a hand in this? You wonder. You know, there were some of those reports that Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, their relationship got a little contentious. They both deny that. Tom Brady wrote a lengthy and glowing Instagram post last night praising Bruce Arians and wishing him well and congratulating him on an amazing run as head coach, not only of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but throughout the National Football League. We'll get into more of that and lots to cover all morning long. James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame just after 8 o'clock. Andy Everett, our official golf guru of the show, as the Valero Texas Open is underway. That's a big deal. And before we go to the high five play of the day, Shannon, I don't know if it's been as windy in Austin the past couple of days as it has in San Antonio. We've had wind advisories. I did see some footage of some golfers out there just kind of practicing on the greens or you know, on the course at the Valero Texas Open. And it's not normally as windy as it was yesterday. And I'm hoping that these winds diminish just to make the play better at the Valero Texas Open, but certainly wind has been an issue here in San Antonio.
Yeah, wind has been an issue here in Austin. I'm sure it affected some golfers. Last week at Dell Match Play, I'm not going to say that's why golf balls were heading towards my head as well as others, but that may have certainly been a cause. I got home yesterday after the show, and it was trash day, and they pick it up pretty early in the morning, but all the bins from the neighborhood were scattered and thrown around because of the wind after they were emptied. It, you know, luckily mine was good and I didn't have to go searching for it. But as I'm pulling mine in, someone else's goes rolling down their driveway because a gust of wind came through. I'm as nice as the weather has been when it's not been windy, I need the wind to calm down.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do, because one of the byproducts of all that wind is allergens.
Yes.
Certainly mountain cedar and other allergens being blown off the trees and in the air. And when that the thing that happened to my voice, and it's still not all the way back, but it's much better than it was. It happens like maybe once a year, maybe if I'm lucky, once every 2 years. But it's kind of allergy related. Something gets into my nose and my throat and my system, and then next thing I know, my vocal cords, I guess, inflame or something. But and over the years, I've had it looked at. It's allergies. Just take some Benadryl, get over it. And like, great. I talk for a living on the radio. Thank you for that diagnosis. All right. Shannon's Salty Shakedown, sports history, sports birthdays, just after 7:30. We mentioned James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Can't wait to get his reaction to this bombshell Bruce Arians news that broke last night. His stepping aside as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Andy EVERETT, as we mentioned, on the Valero Texas Open. So much going on in sports. And right now, what's going on is the High Five play of the day, appropriately sponsored by High Five, 2 locations in the Austin area. Someday, there'll be a location in the San Antonio area. I have offered to trade a Las Palapas to Austin for a High Five. Nobody's gotten back to me on that yet, but I have faith, because George Michael tells me you got to have faith. Shannon, Salty, Sweeney, tell the people what they'll find they won't find any wind in a High Five location. I know that.
No, but if you step into a High Five on a Thursday, which it is today, you'll find $5 bowling at both their Lakeway and Anderson Lane locations. And I know it's crazy, but we're about to hit April, which means parents are already figuring out what to do with their kids in the summertime. High Five offers spring and summer camps for your children, so go check that out. I'd be fine if my parents sent me to that growing up, especially compared to some of the camps I was sent to. I'm not a big fan of arts and crafts, but bowling, laser tag, arcade games, yeah, I could get down with that in my free time away from school. Today's High Five is very special, Chris. For one, because it's not one that you and I came up with, or Jeremy for that matter. It was sent in by a listener. We don't always get emails from the boss. And when we do, you kind of cringe a little before you open it and read it and get through it, especially when it says listener email. But this one was great. And there was plenty of ways, obviously, for you to get in contact with Chris and I via social media, via the video, via the phone line, via that new talkback feature. But you can also email the station, and then that then trickles to our bosses, and then they send it to us. And this listener, Jim DeLine, sent us an email, and I'll read it for you now. It says, I'm a new fan of the morning show. Love the High Five segment, among all the rest of the cool programming. The Lamar Middle School and Highland Park Elementary School Academy teams, both from Austin, placed first in their respective divisions last week at the Texas State Archery Championships in Belton, Texas. The Texas State Championship for Highland Park and the first for Lamar. Highland Park even had an individual female state champion to boot. As we say, great things happen to great kids when great kids do great things. Thanks, Jim DeLine. So, Jim, a high five to you for reaching out with us with that story, and to those kids who are apparently very skilled at the archery. I did archery as a kid at one time in a summer camp, and did not go well. It's a lot harder than it looks, turns out. Didn't have the arm strength for it, or the coordination for that matter. But congrats to those kids on an excellent season. And, sir, I did some looking into Jim DeLine, because I'm like, what, archery, it's a little bit out there, right? It's not the one of the major sports. So how does he know so much about archery? Well, turns out that Jim DeLine is a fantastic and a national award-winning archery coach in the Austin area. He's even won an award in 2021. He won the Coach of the Year by the National Archery in Schools program.
Whoa.
So he knows a thing or two, and he's bestowing that knowledge onto kids in Central Texas, and they're taking it and running away with championships. That is. So a high five to everyone involved. And thank you so much, Jim, for bringing this to our attention. We love giving out local high fives.
That is so cool. And you're so funny, because I'm the same way. Like you, we get an email from the boss, and in the subject heading, it says listener email. Like, all right, who did we offend this time, and who is outraged? But you're right. It was this email from Jim DeLine. However, Shannon, kudos to you. And a secondary high five to you for researching Jim DeLine and finding out what a accomplished and prolific archery coach he is. And kudos to Jim. Obviously, kudos to the archery team. But that's exactly, if you've got a story, especially if it's not, we give high fives out to Tom Brady and Steph Curry and Shaq and DeJounte Murray, whoever. We love the local stories. We love celebrating athletes, and if they're kids, all the better, who are stepping up and doing great things in sports and in life. And that's the perfect example of it. And we were both just tickled to read that email, to learn about these kids, learn about their great job. And like you, Shannon, I dabbled. I was much younger. Archery, it looks so easy, right? You pull back the bow, you aim at the target, you release, and you're good, right? And no, I found out early in my life there are many things I have no aptitude for whatsoever, and one of which is archery. It ain't easy. And maybe if you and I, Shannon, had a coach like Jim DeLine, we'd have done better, but I did not. So cool. I'm with you on the high fives. That's so cool.
I have been playing the latest Assassin's Creed lately, and for those that are video gamers, I know I'm really late to the party because it's been out for a while. But my best weapon is the arrows, the archery. But that's much easier. Pressing a button versus the arm strike, the pullback, and to keep that arrow in line too when you're doing it. I think for me that was the hardest part. I think I'm more of a crossbow person where you can use a trigger. That's way easier, I think. Probably. I'm just saying that. It's probably not. It's probably still very difficult.
Are you saying that with or without crossbow experience? Have you used a crossbow?
None. I just know that there are some that come with actual triggers. So once you get that arrow locked in, you don't have to keep holding on to it.
Yeah, see, I know you're an axe thrower at high five. I know you throw the axes, but see, now if you're like armed with a crossbow, you're turning into Rambo on me all of a sudden. It's kind of getting a little frightening. Jeremy KOLOK, any archery or crossbow experience in your past?
No, I just never felt the need. I've never felt threatened enough by anyone or anything to, be experienced in that. But I certainly respect y'all dabbling into the arts and, the great talented archers across Central Texas winning awards and whatnot.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I think I think it was in high school. I think they had us do it in high school, and I just sucked at it at Holmes High School. But anyway, a big high five. Lots more to talk about. Shannon, we'll get into it more. And Jeremy, the Spurs last night, and I wonder, and it's, I don't want to jinx them. I don't want. I want to be positive. But just that last night, the Spurs never led. They trailed the whole game to the Memphis Grizzlies, and they fought and they clawed and they never gave up. And DeJounte Murray again goes for 33. The other night, just a couple of nights ago, he got a career high 33 points. He equaled that last night. Memphis was without Ja Morant. However, they're like 20-2 when Ja Morant's out of the lineup, so they're still phenomenal. They got the second best record in the NBA. They're red hot. They've won 10 of their last 11. But at the very end, Spurs had the ball with 5.2 seconds left and a timeout. They inbound the ball. They get it to Keldon Johnson. He drives to the basket, very contested, but got the shot off. It was essentially a layup that rimmed out. And with that loss now, the Spurs, and I'm sure you, Shannon, Jeremy, and Andy Everett yesterday talked about it, for about 24 hours, the Spurs were in the number 10 slot in the Western Conference. With the loss, they fall a half game behind the Lakers, and they are now 2 games behind the New Orleans Pelicans. 6 games to play for the Spurs, 7 games to play for the Lakers, 6 games to play for the New Orleans Pelicans. But Shannon, I'm worried when it's over, if the Spurs miss it by just one game. And they do have the tiebreaker against the Lakers and the Pelicans. But if they wound up where they are now, just right behind the Lakers, and if that shot would have gone, that would have given the Spurs the win. I just, wins are so hard to come by at this time of the year, especially against a great team like Memphis. It sucks that it didn't happen last night.
Yeah, especially, John Morant being out, you felt like maybe that would assist and go a long way. And obviously, we talked yesterday, my Mavs beat the Lakers the night before and helped, shuffle the boards a little bit, knock the Lakers out of that play-in spot. But with the loss yesterday, the Spurs and Lakers flip-flop once again. So, hopefully the Lakers can keep doing what they've been doing most of the season, which is losing, and that'll go into the effort of getting the Spurs into that play-in.
Now, the Lakers have an excellent chance of losing tonight. They are at Utah, taking on the Utah Jazz, and LeBron James will not be anywhere in the vicinity. Lakers are on a road trip. Shannon mentions the Lakers losing to the Mavericks a couple of nights ago. They then go to Utah for tonight's game, and we learn last night that LeBron James left the team, headed to LA to get rehab on that ankle. So, and here's the other thing now, with Lakers have 7 to play, Spurs have 6, Pelicans have 6 to play. As we get deeper into these final games and you get into the final 2-3 games of the season, even though you're playing a very, very good team, you don't know if those teams are locked into their position, if they're going to rest players or not. I don't think that's the case for the Jazz tonight, but it is a night. Spurs are idle tonight. They got Portland for 2 games in a row beginning on Friday night, but the Spurs could find themselves right back in the 10 slot late tonight if the Lakers lose to the Utah Jazz. Lots to talk about. This Bruce Arians story is the biggest story in sports. We'll certainly get into that. Chris Rock hits the stage in Boston last night. What did he have to say? That and a whole lot more. We are with you till 9. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. He's Jeremy KOLOK. It's the Chris Duel Show. All righty. I'm going to get some ice. See, I've got iced tea, but I don't have ice. Iced tea without ice is not iced tea. So I'm going to work on that. I'll be right back. Adrian Cavazos about the game last night. Maybe it's just me, but I can't stand Dylan Brooks. Literally fingernails on the chalkboard every time he scored or had the ball. Would have rather been torched by Ja, but regardless, that was a fun game to watch. Yeah, and the good news, Adrian, as bummed as I am that the Spurs lost, again, they fought, they scrapped, they did not quit. They fought their way in a position to win that game with that final shot by Keldon Johnson. So, good on them for that. I'll be back in a sec. All righty. Let's see what else I got going here. I got ice. Ice for my iced tea. Thank goodness. All right. Now. Should cashiers, meat cutters with barbecue experience? Now is the time. Just All right. The Big Bib Barbecue is looking for you. The Big Bib Barbecue is looking for you. The Big Bib Barbecue. Dean Stone, welcome in. Hector Gomez, welcome. Adrian, I was doing Spurs radio, so I did not catch the ladies pregame with Michelle Beadle and company. I'm sure it went well. Dean, Shannon is not going dark. You just jumped in here during a break when she's not on screen, but she'll be here in a sec, within moments, in fact. Here we go. Got to do my little muting here for our evil Facebook overlords. There's Shannon. So I'm going to mute that. Here comes the intro music. 7 o'clock hour. Goes a little something like this. The muting will end in just a sec. When we don't do this, Facebook hears the music and blocks us. Here we come.
Now, Chris Duel.
Welcome in on this final day of March 31st, a throwback Thursday, the first day of Fiesta in San Antonio. Fiesta will go on now through April 10th in San Antonio. It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon, Salty, Sweeney. So much to talk about. Jeremy KOLOK, our Soundscape stylist. The big banner story in sports, we talked about it extensively in the 6 o'clock hour, and we certainly will again, especially an hour from now when James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame joins us. I got a feeling, and I'll have to pull up his Wikipedia. Shannon, I got a feeling Bruce Arians winds up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Obviously, you win a Super Bowl, that goes a long way in on your resume, but just his other stops, what he's done, not only as a head coach, but an assistant in the NFL. In fact, let's ask you and let's ask Jeremy, and then we'll ask James Allen in an hour. Do you believe Bruce Arians will have his bust bronzed in the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday?
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, not just for what he did in such a tight turnaround with receiving a guy like Tom Brady and then turning that into a Super Bowl win and making him a Super Bowl winning head coach, but he's also got a ring from the Steelers when they defeated the Arizona Cardinals in 2008. So, you know, and he won as a receivers coach again with the Steelers in 2005. So he's got 2 other rings as well. So to me, that, you know, they love to count rings. And I don't know that as a head coach, right, that you necessarily have to get it at that head coaching level versus an assistant, right? I mean, eventually, the rings are the rings at that point, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't know about what you might think of that, though.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting, Shannon, and we'll get Jeremy's thoughts here in a moment, but his association with Tom Brady, you know, you wonder if that hurts or helps him. You wonder if there's going to be some cynical voters down the line to go, you had Brady, you know, you were gifted Tom Brady to help you to that one Super Bowl. But you're right. He does have the other Super Bowl. He is the 2-time AP NFL Coach of the Year, pretty darn good. Has led the Buccaneers to their best win percentage ever at 651. He is the oldest coach to win a Super Bowl. That's interesting. And overall in the NFL, he's 80, 48, and 1. That's a percentage of 624 as a head coach. I think it could go either way, but I got a feeling some coaches just have a certain aura about them, and they just feel like they're destined for the Hall of Fame. Shannon and I believe that's a yes ultimately on Bruce Arians. Plus now he's going to be an executive. We'll see for how long with the Bucs. That could play into it as well. Jeremy KOLOK, are you going to make this unanimous, or will you dissent and not grant Bruce Arians your vote someday for the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Yeah, let's go ahead and make it unanimous. I think, like Shannon mentioned, that getting that first Super Bowl win as an assistant with the Steelers certainly helps. And then he he didn't have an extremely long career as a head coach, at least, but he did have success with multiple franchises. I mean, with the Cardinals, they went to the NFC Championship, if I'm not mistaken. So they're a game from the Super Bowl. Of course, he gets the Super Bowl win as a head coach with the Buccaneers. And I just think he, like you mentioned, Chris, he also won 2 AP Coach of the Year awards. And wasn't that first one with Indianapolis as he was like the interim coach?
Yes, he was.
So he has time worked with Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger. He's this quarterback whisperer that we've called him over the years. I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. That you make a great point, and it's interesting. I brought up, the cancer issue and the bout that he has had. Chuck Pagano was the coach of the Indianapolis Colts, who also had a cancer scare. And if you're just tuning in, we don't know exactly why Bruce Arians at this time decided to move into the front office and step aside as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But he is 69 years old. He has had 3 separate bouts with cancer. He once had prostate cancer. He once had kidney cancer. That as a result lost at least half of one kidney. Then they found nasal cancer at one point. So you don't know if that played a part in it. And you wonder, Shannon, if you and I were speculating about the timing of this yesterday, March 30th, a strange time to step aside as a head coach. You never know if a guy, Bruce Arians, although he's known as not being as intense a head coach. I mean, he likes to go to cocktail hour after 5 o'clock. He tells his assistant coaches famously, if you ever miss one of your kids' games or recitals or events at school, I will fire you. Your responsibility is to your family and your kids. I think that's very, very cool. But you never know if Bruce Arians' doctor, for whatever he might have going on health-wise at age 69, said, hey, man, it's probably not healthy for you at this age to go as hardcore as an NFL coach has to go to be successful, even though you may not go as hardcore as a lot of NFL coaches do.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it wouldn't be the first time, right, that we've seen coaches do something like that. And just continuing to think of like the Tom Brady angle of you mentioned maybe Tom should just be named offensive coordinator at the same time. It's almost like he's coming back on his terms to say, I didn't really want to retire that way, right? Have it leak and then have to put out this little note that it says, yes, I am retiring. I want to do it my way. And part of doing it my way is having as much control over a season as I possibly can, because I want to know that if I win it, it's because of me. And if I lose it, it is because of me.
Now, do you think, Shannon, and let's just go ahead and explore one of the conspiracy theories. So Tom Brady retires for 40 days for whatever the reason. And there is word, when Tom, and I forget who the soccer player was, you might remember when he went to Europe and took a photo with the soccer, Ronaldo?
Ronaldo, yeah.
Ronaldo, okay. Apparently the Glazers, the family that owns the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they also own, I think, I read the soccer team that Brady went out to see. So word is maybe Brady had a conversation, with the owners of the Buccaneers, the Glazer family. And as you just kind of described, Shannon, what if one of Brady's stipulations was, hey, if I'm going to come back, Bruce Arians is kind of holding me down a little bit. He's a good man. I like him, but I really want to do things my way. You wonder, I don't feel it, but I some people do out there, that Tom Brady maybe had a hand in this. What do you think, Shannon? Do you think, how possible do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's possible in that Tom Brady has that kind of sway, and that if that's truly what he wanted was Bruce Arians out, and the choice was Bruce Arians, who's probably going to leave eventually, and Tom Brady, and who's more valuable to the team as far as winning a Super Bowl, winning one right now, you got to choose Tom Brady. But it's so interesting because we talked about how Tom Brady left the Patriots, right, because he didn't have that control, and that deterioration between him and Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick and Bruce Arians, to me, on the spectrum of coaching and coaching styles, could not be more different, right? I mean, Bruce Arians is known as the guy who hangs out with the players and becomes friends with them. And, they hang out after games, and he's a friendly dude. Whereas Bill Belichick, the standoffish, we are here for business. It is business all of the time, 24/7. I do not want to hear about your personal life. Right. Bruce Arians, when he first took over that Tampa team, was like, you're not going to miss one of your kids' recitals, right? You're not going to miss out on that important family time for football, because that family is forever, and football is, such a short lifespan. So at this point, I'm wondering if Tom Brady did have a hand in saying no more Bruce Arians. Well, I mean, who is he going to listen? Like, at this point, it's Tom Brady. Like, he's the head coach. He is Coach Tom Brady, because apparently no one suits his style as far as having an authority figure over Tom Brady.
Now, for people just tuning in, and I see we're getting a question on the live video feed from Kevin Monk, who says, does Byron Leftwich get the job? Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The answer is no. The job is going to Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator. And Shannon, I find that fascinating again as well, because one of the big storylines each of the last 2 years, and even going deeper than that, Byron Leftwich, people have scratched their heads and said, why isn't Byron Leftwich a head coach in the NFL? Now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers themselves had an opportunity to make Byron Leftwich the head coach, and they choose to go defense. Now, obviously, both of those guys are wildly qualified, Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers choose to go Todd Bowles as their head coach. I guess we'll never know for sure, but any thoughts on, even when the Tampa Bay, we've heard all these NFL teams, well, there's 7 openings or there's 8 openings in the NFL. How come nobody hired Byron Leftwich?
Yeah.
Well, the team that knows him now better than anybody else, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, did not elevate Byron Leftwich to head coach. That is kind of a subplot here to this story.
It kind of feels like they're in a bit of a Cowboys situation, right? Like the story going back to that Kansas City Tampa Bay Super Bowl was, Kansas City offense versus that great Tampa Bay defense. So if you're looking at it that way, the defense has had more to show than that offense. I mean, the offense, you take Tom Brady out and what do you have? I mean, it's next to nothing. Tom Brady got all of the praise that season and continues to get that way. But you're wondering if, in the eyes of the Buccaneers organization, if Todd Bowles was their Dan Quinn, right? Of the two, you don't want to let either of them go, but you're losing Bruce Arians. You got to give one of them the job. Who is more valuable overall? And for whatever reason, right now they're choosing Todd Bowles. Whether or not that's the right decision, who knows? But I'd love if the Cowboys, like if Mike McCarthy was today, like, you know what? I was just kidding. Wasn't doing my due diligence. My due diligence was that I was looking for a realtor and a moving company. And, oh, by the way, Dan Quinn is your next Dallas Cowboys head coach.
See, and Shannon, we kind of alluded to this in the 6 o'clock hour. If you would have said to me 24 hours ago, one of these coaches will move into the front office and they will elevate the defensive coordinator to head coach. It's either going to be Bruce Arians goes to the front office and DC Todd Bowles becomes the head coach, or Mike McCarthy goes to the front office and DC Dan Quinn becomes the head coach. I would have said, if it's going to be one, I would have said 80-20 or 90-10, especially with Tom Brady coming back. I would have said, oh my God, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are going to orchestrate this. It's like, hey, Mike McCarthy, cush job in the front office. We're going to give you some more money. Go enjoy yourself. We'll give you a corner office with a view over the football field in Frisco. We're going to make Dan Quinn defensive coordinator. That seemed like so much more the logical move than what actually happened last night, which is Bruce Arians leaving as head coach, going to the front office, and then Todd Bowles becoming head coach. But back to your point about both of these guys, and maybe it was a dilemma that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had. Maybe they had to ask themselves, if we promote Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles is going to walk. Maybe not immediately, but after this season, he's going to say, I'm going to go get another gig, even if it's DC, but possibly as a head coach. Or is Byron Leftwich going to walk? And for whatever the reason, it sure sounds like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made the decision that Todd Bowles is a more valuable coach, at least right now, to elevate to head coach than Byron Leftwich. It's so weird. And we've heard so much weird speculation about Byron Leftwich, including, maybe the guy's just not that good in an interview. You got to interview a guy for head coach, and maybe for what, some people, some people are good on the SAT test, and some people are good on academics and not on the other, and some people have different aptitudes, and maybe your aptitude is offense, but not necessarily either an interview or being a head coach. And for whatever the reason, Todd Bowles is the guy in Tampa Bay.
And we'll just have to see his record. He was the head coach of the Jets, which, that's like the Browns being where quarterbacks go to die, coaches go to die at the Jets. So he'll get a better opportunity this go round.
Now, a couple of things, and I want to make my way to the big Eric Church controversy, which is not only in San Antonio, it's I was listening to national news on the way in. And we're going to get to it. Famously, Eric Church had a big concert this weekend in San Antonio. He's choosing, nope, I'd rather watch North Carolina in the Final Four against Duke. And it turns out, even though he's from North Carolina, Eric Church didn't even go to North Carolina. He went to Appalachian State. But I'll get into that in a moment. First, though, speaking of San Antonio, Shannon, and I know you lived here for a brief time. Fiesta is one of the big marquee celebrations in San Antonio. It begins today. They have an event called Fiesta at Hemisphere downtown. It's going to go through April 10th. Of course, there's Nyosa, there's Oyster Bake, there's the King William Fair, Battle of Flowers Parade, a gazillion events at Fiesta. When you were here, Shannon, I know Austin has South by Southwest and other great events, but this is like, whenever I've talked to people, like when I went to USC and would describe my hometown and they said, what's Fiesta? The closest thing I could compare, I'd say, well, it's kind of like San Antonio's version of Mardi Gras. It's when San Antonio comes out and just parties and celebrates and goes a little crazy and drinks for about 12 days and eats a lot of food. Did you have a chance to sample Fiesta when you were a brief San Antonian?
Chris, I don't remember who told me, but I remember I was driving with some friends, also not from San Antonio, and we were talking about Fiesta coming up, and we were told to avoid Fiesta. And I don't know if they're like, we were told by somebody who was from San Antonio, they're like, you're not from here, so don't come to my party. But so no, I've never fiestaed, but I'd like to fiesta. Like to get down with the Fiesta. It's like somebody in Austin saying avoid South by Southwest or ACL. I mean, yeah, but I live by that as well. New Orleans saying avoid Mardi Gras. You don't want to do that party. Jeremy KOLOK, your Fiesta experience and your Fiesta perception.
Yeah, it's been a while because I left the state for Oklahoma for college for a few years, and then,
Traitor.
well, yeah, and then I came back though, and when I came back, they had this weird 2020, like, well, we're not gonna
Mhm.
have Fiesta at the normal time. We're gonna try to push it back, but it's not gonna be the whole thing. We're canceling like half the events. So I felt kind of like I wasn't, it wasn't the real Fiesta, not to be
Yeah.
that guy. So I've been waiting for this for a long time, Chris. I'm very ready for Fiesta. Long overdue for myself.
I think because of the pandemic, it's been so long since we've fiestaed like normal. I think that's going to make it even more intense. I think people are going to really dive into it. All right. During Fiesta, it was going to be this big concert, Shannon. Eric Church, now famously, and it's a national story now, canceled his concert. Yeah, didn't postpone it, canceled it. I'm hearing stories. I heard a national story today. A woman is losing her hotel accommodations for the weekend for $460. It's non-refundable. And she says, Eric Church owes me $460. Lots of stories like that. If you had this confidence in North Carolina, do you schedule this concert only to cancel it? A lot of people who were Eric Church fans are now saying not so much a fan anymore. Shannon, have you heard anything like this before? And how do you feel about Eric Church and his decision to cancel a big concert in San Antonio so he can watch North Carolina versus Duke?
As far as the scheduling goes, this concert has been on the books, I want to say, for almost 2 years. So obviously he didn't know. And obviously at the time, with COVID, things kept getting pushed back, and this ended up being the final date. But dude, it's just and he said it in his statement that he's seen UNC and Duke play several times, but this is the first time that they're playing in a Final Four, and this is very selfish of me, and I understand that. But the fact that he just straight up canceled and is not rescheduling, especially when, because of COVID and everything else, that people have had these tickets and had these hotel reservations and had these plans, and maybe some even had plane tickets to go to this show, for him to just say, yeah, I'm gonna just cancel. I don't even wanna deal with it. So I'm saying Duke by 10, right? I mean, karma coming after him. And as far as him not going as far as him not going to UNC for school, I know UNC is like a pretty well renowned educational opportunity, and I don't know what his high school grades looked like, but that may have had something to do with it.
Yeah, I think, obviously you don't have to go to Texas to be a Texas fan. I get that on a certain level. Jeremy KOLOK, you are a music aficionado. Are you an Eric Church fan? Were you an Eric Church fan? How do you feel about this move?
I think as a loyal San Antonian, I'm anti Eric Church as of right now, and I just think that's just the way things need to be moving forward.
I am too. I was pulling for Duke because my bracket's busted, and I now want Coach K to get the win and ride off into the sunset. But I am really pulling for. I don't want North Carolina to win now. I want Eric Church to get the blowback of canceling the San Antonio concert and have North Carolina lose anyway, just to throw some salt on that wound, if it's a wound for him. And Shannon, why could, all right, you could be a super fan, I get it. Why couldn't he do the concert, put some big screens on the stage with him, do the concert in a North Carolina jersey, and have some fun with it? Say, hey y'all, I'm a fan. I'm watching the game.
You say that, and I have an excellent point about my man Justin Timberlake, who's done what Eric Church should have done. Back on his last tour, he was in London over the summer, and England was in one of the knockout stages of the World Cup, and they got pretty deep. And it was on like night 2 of one of his shows, and he said, I understand that, I can't move the schedule. So what we're going to do is you come to my show early. He's got all these giant projector screens out. He comes out and watches the game with the fans. And then after the game ends, they had a concert, and the game didn't go the way that they wanted it to. They ended up losing and being knocked out of the World Cup, but then they had this huge concert that they could attend. I think he should have done something like that. I'm looking at his statement now, and he's basically flipping the whole thing onto the fans of San Antonio, saying, this is the most selfish thing I've ever asked to give up your Saturday night plans with us so that I can have this moment with my family and sports community. It's the same type of passion felt by the people who fill the seats at our concert that make us want to be part of a crowd at this game is so significant. Then he adds a quote that says, "Go where you go and do what you do. Thanks for letting me go here and be with the Tar Heels." Nobody in San Antonio gave you permission. No one was like, "Hey man, before you say anything, we want you to know that we want you to go to this." Like, where did he get that? This is ridiculous. Be better, man.
Yeah. People are flying in. People have gotten hotel reservations. Yeah. And as you just described, Justin Timberlake, there's a way to do this where it's a win-win for everybody. Quick break coming up. Shannon's Salty Shakedown on a Throwback Thursday, final day of March. Sports history, sports birthdays. Just after 8 o'clock, James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, his reaction to Bruce Arians stepping aside as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll ask him if he thinks Bruce Arians is a future Hall of Famer. Andy Everett. We'll talk Valero, Texas Open, and more with Andy at 8:35. Lots of show coming between now and 9. It's the Chris Duel Show. There we go. Now I need, let's see, 2. Jesse Martinez sounding off. Yeah, JB, we're not hating on North Carolina. I'm just hating on that Eric Church is doing this, and I'm pulling for Duke for Coach K to ride off into the sunset. I'm not basing that on hatred for North Carolina. My God, they're one of the greatest programs ever. It's more. I just, you know, I would like to see. I don't have a dog in the fight, except for I think the Coach K story would be fun. So anyway, if it comes off as hate, it's not meant to be. Now, hate for Eric, and I don't hate Eric Church, but I just think that was a bad move. Now, had they rescheduled, it wouldn't be as bad. Had they rescheduled and then he, honors all the tickets and all that, it wouldn't be as bad. But from what I'm hearing, there's no reschedule. It's canceled. We're not doing it. So. Yeah, a few people mentioning Hispanic Elvis has passed away. That's sad. I'll have to look into that. Gordon is our resident music expert. Okay, let's see. I got to email something here. Let's see. Oh, I know what this is. Viva Fiesta. Here we come. Woo! Woo! Jesse, hang in there. Going back out on the road in 2 weeks. Jesse, we appreciate it, man.
I hear the train a-coming. It's rolling around.
Let's
The man in black, Mr. Johnny Cash. Jeremy KOLOK is your Soundscape stylist. Chris Duel show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. I just spoke over his San Antonio lyric, or San Antone. Anyway, welcome in. Chris Duel show. She is Shannon Salty Sweeney. Her Salty Shakedown is moments away. Coming up just after 8 o'clock, James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We will continue to react to the huge story of the last several hours. Bruce Arians steps aside as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He'll move into the front office. Defensive coordinator Todd Bowles is elevated to head coach, and Tom Brady has got some conspiracy theories swirling around him. Don't forget the free iHeartRadio app. You can leave us messages instantly and in real time as you listen, either via AM 1300 The Zone or Ticket 760. There's a microphone button right at the bottom. You click on it, you leave us a message, you send it, we get it instantly. It's very, very cool. Andy Everett of the Golf Show, voice of UTSA Athletics. He will almost certainly be out at the Valero Texas Open today. He might even be out there when he talks to us this morning. We'll find out. Before we go to Shannon's Salty Shakedown, how about some sports birthdays and this day in sports history? March 31st, 1973. I remember this. It was a big deal. Muhammad Ali suffers a broken jaw in a shocking split decision that gives the victory to Ken Norton in 12 rounds in San Diego. Ali would win the rematch months later. Ali had to have his jaw wired shut for a long time. And, of course, that Ken Norton, his son Ken Norton Jr., would become a Dallas Cowboy, now an assistant coach in the NFL. This day in 1974, American golfer Lee Trevino goes bogey-free for all 4 rounds as he wins the Greater New Orleans Open by 8 strokes over Bobby Cole and Ben Crenshaw. This day in 1975, it was the 37th NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. UCLA beat Kentucky 92-85. It was UCLA's 10th title under John Wooden, who 2 days before that game announced he would retire after that game. So kind of a Coach K thing, only you didn't know that was coming until 2 days before the national championship game. That's your sports history. How about some sports birthdays? Born on this day in 1878, the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion, Jack Johnson. He was the world heavyweight boxing champion from 1908 to 1915, 7 years. Jack Johnson was born in Galveston, Texas. He passed away in 1946. Born on this day in 1928, Hockey Hall of Fame right winger Gordie Howe, 23-time NHL All-Star, played for the Detroit Red Wings, dabbled in the WHA with the Houston Aeros late in his career. Gordie Howe was born in Floral, Saskatchewan. He passed away in 2016. And finally, born on this day in 1962, 3-time Super Bowl winning NFL wide receiver John Taylor, number 82. You don't hear a lot about John Taylor because he was on the other side of Jerry Rice. But John Taylor, had he not played with Jerry Rice, he was an amazing wide receiver. He would have probably been one of the best wide receivers for almost any other NFL franchise, maybe in their history. John Taylor was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but we'll forgive him for that. And I forgive him for being a San Francisco 49er even. I'm full of forgiveness. I even forgave Kawhi Leonard. I'm the Gandhi of forgiveness. Those are your sports birthdays. That's your sports history. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, countrymen, farm animals, pole assassins, and monkeys, here it is, your final day of March, Salty Shakedown.
Chris, we did it. It's been years, but we did it. It's been since 2014 to be exact. The U.S. men's national team is heading back to the World Cup in 2022. They lost last night, by the way, to Costa Rica, 2-0. But thanks to goal differential, they placed third in the CONCACAF, which earns them the trip to the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. Now, interestingly, because it is taking place in that country, which, by the way, will be they've got 8 stadiums and it'll take place across 5 cities. But because of the weather over there, it's so hot in the summer, so hot that they're not going to have the World Cup during its usual summertime tradition. They're going to do it November through December, specifically November 21st through December 18th. Should, USA make it all the way, that would be when the final is played. I don't know how I feel about the dates of this World Cup. I'm obviously going to be paying attention. I'm super excited that the U.S. is back in it, and so going to make it a priority to watch each game. But Chris, that timeline, what is it that? Oh yeah, American football goes on during that time of year.
Yeah.
And, for as much as the U.S., I think even since 2014 has gotten into soccer, right, especially with the women's team winning back-to-back World Cups, it's in the summer. There's the void of summer sports, right? Your baseball's going on, but it's not really to the point where games are really starting to matter as much as they might later on in the season. Everyone can jump on board and be Team USA, but when you have football going on at the same time, unless the scheduling just happens to work out in everyone's favor, I don't think we're going to be paying too much attention to the World Cup this year.
I agree. Huge mistake, I believe, to schedule it against football. But obviously, Qatar, a lot of money.
And there's the rest of the
being
world
thrown at. Yeah. So, and my only guess is because it's on the other side of the world, those will be in the middle of the night. So I guess insomniacs can watch it and people can watch it on replay. But you're right. For us who love American football, that's going to be really, really weird. And I think it's going to take away from some of the allure in the States.
Yeah. The rest of the world obviously doesn't care. If anything, they're just upset that they have to wait that much longer for a World Cup that would typically take place during the summer. But congrats to Team USA for finally getting it done and making it back to the world stage. All right. Over in Vegas, a place that I recently visited a couple weeks ago, as if there aren't enough venues and arenas and stadiums going on over there, a group just purchased 25 acres near the Strip, about 10 minutes away, for a new sports and entertainment district that will house a 20,000-seat arena, and they say that it will be, quote, NBA ready. Now, the NBA not currently seeking expansion, but if they do, people have thought Las Vegas would be a place for the NBA to go, right? They've got that WNBA team. They obviously just got the Raiders. They've got the Knights and the hockey. So they've obviously can withstand a professional sports league. But Chris, my question is with this new venue, right? Right now, T-Mobile Arena is where the WNBA team plays, and it's where the Knights play their hockey games. For those games, they can hold 18,000 fans. Does the 2,000 fans make a difference in saying, hey, let's go further off the Strip to this new basketball arena and let's put a new NBA team in it? How many of these venues can we have going on here where someone will eventually say enough is enough?
Well, and I mean, I think normally in any other city, I think that I would be with you. But I just wonder, because Vegas is Vegas. And as you know, you were just there. It is such a destination. And the NBA is so filled with international superstars. And the NBA is such an international game. I just think it's a no-brainer for the NBA to go to Vegas. Now, the venue, that's a debate worth having. But I got a feeling, there's so much money involved and so much money to be made in Vegas that I think the NBA is going to get there, especially now seeing it's working in the NFL and in other sports. I think the NBA is going to get there as quick as it can.
This new sports entertainment district will have a hotel, of course, a casino, and plenty of other goings on, as well as that apparently NBA ready arena just hoping to get a team. And someone on our live feed just said, Spurs moved to Vegas? I don't know.
God help us.
I don't know. They've already got that WNBA team. I wouldn't count on it, but NBA ready arena being built in Vegas the next couple of years. All right, finally, Final Four is this weekend, and a team that sadly, I think to us basketball fans who aren't necessarily fans of those in the Final Four are going to be missing St. Peter's, the Peacocks. What a story they were this year during March Madness. But Chris, even though they lost last weekend, they are still celebrating. Head coach Shaheen Holloway, he's celebrating in that he is leaving the school to become the next head coach of his alma mater, Seton Hall. Although the contract details are not completely available, we can guesstimate that he's going to get quite the payday because he is apparently making less than $300,000 a year as the head coach of the Peacocks. Gosh, that poor guy. How does he live on such a paycheck? But the previous coach of Seton Hall was making $2.4 million a year. So I think the guy is going to be moving up when he makes the 20-minute drive to his new location as a head coach. But the Peacocks basketball team, the campus bookstore, the outfitters around the city, they have not been able to keep Peacocks merch on the shelves. Everything is being sold out. They get in more, it immediately sells out. Even from across the country, people are buying things. The school itself says the applications have gone up 56% from last year since their run in the NCAA tournament, and contributions to the school have risen from $500K to $2 million. So everyone is reaping the benefits, and to celebrate, there's going to be a parade tomorrow in Jersey City for the team and the head coach, and they're going to get keys to the city to go along with it. Chris, a parade seems like a bit much. I love to hear that the school is getting notoriety, that they're getting more funds, that they're getting in more applications than ever before. But keys to the city just for going to the Elite Eight? I don't know about that. And a parade.
What? Because I'm for it. Because no other 15 seed ever made it to the Elite Eight. They made history. So I'm cool with it. Celebrate it. But I just wonder, Shannon, and it's a case of watch what you ask for. St. Peter's had this huge run, and as you mentioned, as a result, now their coach, Shaheen Holloway, goes to what turns out it was his alma mater, Seton Hall, and he was an assistant coach previously at Seton Hall, so he's kind of going home. It's almost like a Chris Beard thing going on. But I mean, if you're a St. Peter's fan, you had this great run, and now you lose your head coach. I don't know how happy you are about that. I mean, you got to be happy for him, as you mentioned, to go from $300K to maybe $2.4 million as a salary. Good for him. But you just lost the architect of your great run to the Elite Eight. That's just it's got to be a bittersweet moment at that parade for all those people.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get some good audio from that as he officially says goodbye to the Peacocks. But okay, I'll take it on that. They're the first 15 seed to do what they did, but the next 15 seed, no parade for you, no mas. All right, no parade for you. There it is, today's Salty Shakedown.
Wow, so much to digest in another outstanding Salty Shakedown. See, this was part of the concern last year. What you saw happen at St. Peter's, and they lose their coach, Shaheen Holloway, a bigger school with a lot more money gobbles him up. When UTSA was going undefeated last year, Shannon, so deep into the season, and Jeff Traylor was getting all of these national television and radio interviews, that was, and I think that continues to be for UTSA alums and fans. Now, granted, he just signed this big 10-year contract, so good for him and smart for UTSA to lock him in. But if Jeff Traylor continues to have that phenomenal success, and say an SEC team comes calling, even though he's got a contract, I don't know what the out clauses may be, but it is odd when you're a program that is not used to having that kind of success, like St. Peter's in basketball, and like UTSA now is with Jeff Traylor. You hope he'll stick around and love it and continue to build, but sometimes it can go the other way. And we'll get into someday, as one listener said, what if the Spurs went to Las Vegas? I know it sounds outlandish, and I don't think it'll happen, but the Seattle Supersonics are no longer with us. If things don't go swimmingly, weird stuff can happen in professional sports. That's a discussion for another day. Coming up, James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Bruce Arians stepping aside next on the Chris Duel Show. Yeah. Well, and once I was looking at the wrong rundown hour. I was even looking at the correct hour this time and totally screwed it up. So, oh well, I'll work on that. Sorry. Luisa Alanis, good morning. Yeah, there's James Allen. James is going to join us here in a minute. Ernest, a Spurs move to Vegas is not outlandish. It's highly unlikely, but it's not impossible. It's not absolutely never going to happen. Tell the Cleveland Browns when Modell moved Cleveland out of there. The Baltimore Colts, the Seattle Supersonics. It can happen. I don't think it's going to happen. And Seattle had won an NBA championship. I know we've won 5. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's likely to happen. In fact, I'm saying it's highly unlikely to happen, but it is not impossible. Awful things happen in sports, and awful things can happen to a small market. So I just say it's a cautionary tale, and Spurs fans need to continue to support their team through thick and thin, no matter what. All right. I'm going to go get some more ice, and I may guzzle some more coffee. There's James Allen. He's going to join us next. Obviously, James, we're going to talk Bruce Arians, among other topics. Buenos dias, Jason. I should plug my phone in. That would be a really good idea. The one time I didn't plug it in a few weeks ago was the day my car's engine blew out on Loop 410. So I'm like, and I've got very little battery left. I'm trying to get roadside assistance. So I learned the hard way. Keep your battery charged and have backup phone batteries in your vehicle.
So Monday night, the ball goes in and out of the rim twice at the end and gives the Spurs a win. Last night,
Yeah.
it's a layup. They hit the rim twice.
Very similar. Yeah. Do it, but it would have been a lot better
Oh, sure.
to be a game up on the Lakers right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jeremy is calling James Allen. See him over there on the phone. John Williams tells us today is National Commuter Day. Here we come in just a moment. James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Of course, the Bruce Arians story is huge. We'll get into that and more with James Allen coming right up. Going to mute a little bit at the top. Here comes theme music.
This is the Chris Duel Show.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run.
Here we go.
Now, Chris Duel.
8 o'clock hour on this final day of March, this throwback Thursday, this first day and week, but the first day of Fiesta on the morning after a bombshell development in the National Football League. And nobody better to talk about it than James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He is on the board. He is on the selection committee. And last night we learned that Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Bruce Arians will step aside as head coach. He'll take a consultant position in the front office. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers elevate defensive coordinator Todd Bowles to head coach. It was kind of interesting. They also had Byron Leftwich as offensive coordinator to choose from. They chose Todd Bowles instead. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the NFL and more with James Allen on the board, on the selection committee of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. James Allen, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Good morning, Chris, Shannon, and Jeremy, and thank you for everybody for listening.
How surprised were you, James? I was shocked when I heard the Bruce Arians news. Did it shock you as well?
It shocked me. I think we mentioned a while back after probably one of the top two playoff coaching moves had nothing to do with Bruce, and I'm not trying to do conspiracy. I know that shook Brady is when you're 12 seconds left, they're way down, and you let the best receiver in modern history or lately, and obviously right underneath Randy and Jerry Rice, wide open in a prevent situation. I know that got everybody down. Had nothing to do with Bruce. I always thought somebody would be I knew that Tom would be disenchanted, which I think that's why he was. Had nothing to do with Bruce, but I was shocked. But, remember, Bruce retired from the Cardinals in 2017 because of health issues, right? And then the Tampa Bay, the owners called him back and said, come on, just, do it again and outlaid all the people they had and all the talent they had and coached them to do that. So remember, there's an underlying current there. This has nothing to do with Tom Brady because, as you know, Bruce and the general manager and the owner said, Tom, we need your help, right? It's a great story. And so it's nothing that, it's no conspiracy theory. Bruce really came within what I think a very, very bad defensive call. Like I said, probably the worst I've ever seen, except for maybe Pete Carroll's, with Marshawn Lynch on the half-yard line throwing a pass, but which had nothing to do with the head coach. I just was just surprised because he's got so much going on, but it also makes sense logistically knowing of a class act because the Rooney rule's in effect ends after March 1. And the Rooney rule you have to go through an interview process, and then you have to interview diversity people, and you have to go through that whole process that the owner for the Steelers put in, I think, in 2003. So I think also it makes sense that he does it now so it can be seamless. So I just think I don't have any inside information. But I believe it's probably health related because just remember not too long ago when the Cardinals were killing it, were doing well, he had to step down for health issues. So I think it's along those lines. I mean, he's making $8 million a year, and he has Tom Brady, he has Mike Evans, he picked up another great receiver, everything's going his way, and so I really think this is for his, which I admire, to walk away from money for health reasons and take care of his, obviously his family.
Well, you mentioned that defensive call that ultimately ended the Bucks season this past year. Well, Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, has been named the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Why do you think he was chosen? And do you think that he can continue the success that they've seen in the last 2 recent years and continue to grow? And why he might be the right choice for a guy like Tom Brady, who's returned to that team?
Head scratcher on the defensive coordinator getting it over the offensive coordinator. However, I would say because Tom, again, as we all know, through the general manager, the owner, and through the head coach, was allowed to. They came in for his help. He helped out on the offensive side a lot, so it makes sense to. They don't need Leftwich or any other OC help. I mean, Tom is the OC. So it makes sense from balance because Tom is not a defensive guy. He's made it very clear he really can't help in that. So that makes sense from a strategy standpoint. How he'll do, I mean, Bruce has been doing this, for a long time. He has, a 60% record in the NFL, which is hard to do overall, and then a 60% over, in the playoffs or around close to that. How anybody will feel that. But it's kind of like Barry Switzer kind of coming behind Jimmy Johnson. That's a hell of a team, and it's a hell of a chemistry, and so it's kind of hard to too much. I mean, it's pressure, but it's not a big leap, if you will. And I don't think there's going to be anything shocking as far as his competency level. But I was surprised it was the defensive coordinator. However, the more I thought about it this morning, it made sense for me from a balance standpoint.
James Allen from the Pro Football Hall of Fame with us. James, we speculated on this earlier in the show, and nobody better to pose this question to than you. Shannon and Jeremy and I wondered, is Bruce Arians a future Hall of Famer? You mentioned his winning percentage in the NFL, 624 in the regular season, 62.4%. Postseason 6-3, 667. Not only the Super Bowl that he gets with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but twice as an assistant coach, he was on the staff of a Super Bowl champion. And at age 68 a year ago, he was the oldest coach to win a Super Bowl. You know a thing or two about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Do you think Bruce Arians is Hall of Fame material?
Well, and also I think he was Coach of the Year twice as well. So
yes,
that's another big honor. So that actually comes into play behind the scenes of the voting. It's real easy to pontificate about Gronk or Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Donaldson. Like Von Miller will probably be there, about people that are going to get there. I think Bruce, and obviously on the I've got to be relatively careful, but I mean, my personal thing is I think he's on the edge of it. I don't know if he's if you look at the Hall of Fame coaches, if it's quite that career, but the Super Bowl win gets you to the yard, and twice Coach of the Year get you to the front porch, and a 600 thing definitely, gets your foot in the door. As far as getting all the way in, I could see it happening down the way. But it's not a shoe in, and it's not just like I said, it's not as much as I'm not a fan of the guys' chemistry on the team, it's not an Aaron Rodgers or a Gronkowski or a Tom Brady type situation.
James, Chris and I talked about this earlier in the week when it was kind of made known that Peyton Manning had sent Tom Brady a handwritten note following his retirement that was very genuine and loving. And now he's jokingly saying that he wants it back because Tom Brady has since unretired. To me, that feels like a moment in NFL history, and that should be something that the Pro Football Hall of Fame should go after to include in that museum. Your thoughts and how does that go about when the Pro Football Hall of Fame decides that that is an artifact, whether it's something from a game or something like this that's just a piece of NFL history? How do they go about trying to acquire that to land it in the museum?
We actually have people that are very good at that, and as you know, we get gloves, shoes right away from everybody. that's put in there, and players are willing to give that up in teams. The note would probably not be saying, although I personally like it. As you know, Peyton Manning, in his very limited speech, because of the new Hall of Fame rules, mentioned a joke about Tom Brady. And that when Tom Brady, I think he said when Tom Brady retires in 2040 something, ha ha ha. That's Peyton. Love his humor. I love things. Personally, I think the note could make its way to the Hall, maybe right after Tom gets in. But the Hall is more about stat accolades in a game or something like that. But from a purely passionate standpoint, I love it, and I love that Peyton is such a class act, and that he has fun with things in a very, without being snarky. And it's classical Peyton. And again, it was kind of great that he brought up Tom. Tom was actually at the Hall of Fame induction for him, and he brought it up in the speech. So I love that dichotomy. Obviously, not as much as Brad Paisley and Peyton, their thing, but it's great to see some of the best quarterbacks in modern history edifying each other and having fun with each other. I personally like it. I just don't think the artifact will probably make its way into there. But I personally would be a fan. In fact, I'm not going to dive into Vegas right now, but Vegas is kind of coming up. We got Super Bowl in 2 years. We got the NFL draft this year. I'm going to be there, so it's interesting. I just wrote that down. I'm going to kind of mention that. So,
James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. James, you bring up Vegas, and Shannon brought it up on her Salty Shakedown. Vegas, like a new sports and entertainment district, is being created, just a whole nother area. They will also build an arena that is NBA ready. When I heard that, it just seems to me, especially with all these other sports, hockey, NFL, you've got the former San Antonio Stars now in the WNBA, the Las Vegas Aces, where Becky Hammon will be the head coach as soon as her duties end this season for the San Antonio Spurs. NBA in Vegas sounds like a no-brainer to me, James. It is such not only a national game, but an international game. Almost every NBA team has some kind of a star that everybody's heard of in the world of sports, or sometimes around the world. What do you think the prospects are of the NBA in very short order showing up in Las Vegas?
Well, I think it's gonna. By the way, I don't think it's gonna be the Spurs. I don't think the Holt family, especially Peter John and his sister, would do that. But like you said, never know. But I definitely think it's ripe for it. Vegas is hot. Another thing is, remember, Super Bowl is gonna be, to get a Super Bowl in your town is a huge deal. 2024, it's in Las Vegas. The NFL draft, April 28th to the 30th, in Las Vegas. Things are happening. And Vegas is kind of the new kid on the block, and people are, like you said, hockey teams, NBA, I mean, they're doing everything. So I absolutely agree that an NBA team, if there's Vegas has so much money, as we've seen, and so many people that will build spec stuff and everything else. All it takes is an owner somewhere in the NBA, which is not as dynamic as the NFL, and say, hey, I want a new arena. I wanted this. I wanted that. No, Vegas. I think that's absolutely going to, with all the tea leaves we just mentioned and more, what Shannon mentioned and what you're talking about, absolutely think it's going to happen.
James, with the coaches all coming together for league meetings and that iconic, as always, photo of all of them that are at least willing to stand in the photo, whether they like it or not, Mike McCarthy is absent. And anytime the Cowboys aren't with the other folks around the league, it makes news. And McCarthy saying that he was going to do some scouting and instead. What do you like or not like about his decision to skip out on the meetings this year?
Knowing the atmosphere there, that's a Jerry Jones decision. And I do think Mike knows his job, is on the line this year. And I do believe that, obviously Jerry can say go to the meeting or not, because obviously Jerry not only is the owner, but he's also a Hall of Famer and on the board of the Hall of Fame, and he's very influential with the NFL. So I believe that's Jerry Jones, Steve Jones, and the coach's decision. And I do believe, hey, we got to win. So extra days doing things. I don't read anything into that except as hyper focus for the Cowboys and hyper focus for their coach. I don't read anything nefarious or Machiavellian or any kind of shun in that at all.
James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame joins us. And James, an A&M alum, still very, very active at Texas A&M. James, Shannon brought this up earlier in the week. Johnny Manziel has said publicly he wants to be more involved in the football program at Texas A&M. He is even open to becoming a coach at Texas A&M. Is from your perspective, could you see Johnny Manziel on the coaching staff? Could you see him as a quarterbacks coach or some sort of a special assistant coach on that team? And what do you think that would do for the university, positive or negative?
Well, I've met Johnny. I know his parents, and not being disingenuous, but if you take Jimbo Fisher and the level Jimbo Fisher has coached at different programs, and you're one of the top programs in the country, you're definitely in the hardest league in the country by a long shot. With the SEC, no, I don't see any fit there in any shape or form, except for as an ambassador. And then, of course, and I'm sure I'm opening jokes up for Shannon on this one, but and she'd be right to say ambassador. Well, remember, it's about football, ambassador. It's not about what you did out of the sidelines, and it's about college ambassador. I could see that, although with people getting paid to go to college, be to play players with the NIL, now with the SEC, the branding. That's why UT's coming over in Oklahoma. Not that they need the money. They're doing it because they need to recruit people. Hey, your brand will now be seen by more people through SEC and more exposure and more advertisers than everybody else combined. That kind of overshadows the ambassador thing. I just don't see the ambassador thing going there. But I can see them saying, "Hey, there's a quarterback who's not thinking or thinking. Can you help us out, Johnny, and beat something like that?" Maybe something along those lines. But with the money that's coming down, these kids, they want to be branding. They want to get their own this. They want to get their own shirts. They want to get everything else. I don't think they can tell Johnny, "Hey, so what? I'm getting a better deal over at Alabama. Or I'm getting a better deal over at UT or Ohio State or whatever else." So I just don't see it. I could see it as an ambassador role, yes, but I don't see it as a coaching thing.
If anything, it would be the do's and don'ts of the Johnny Manziel era at Texas A&M. That to me makes the most sense. James, speaking of Texas A&M, obviously we're about to go into April, and April is the month for spring games. Texas A&M will host theirs on April 9th. Do you have any intention of heading out there to see your Aggies?
No. I've got too much going on. No, I'm not. I am going to A&M on April. Wait a minute. You said the 9th? No, I'm not going there until the next week. So I won't be making the game there. So I won't be attending that. I've been asked to go, but with my schedule and literally just the president of the Hall of Fame mentioned to me if I would go to the draft, and even talked to me last night in Vegas with April. So just a lot of things are gearing up for me in different events and appearances. I just can't make it, but I would love to have gone. And my daughter's up there. Hopefully my son's getting a lot of scholarship offers. And so we don't know if he's going to go up there or not. And he's getting a lot of great looks. So I definitely would like to go up there probably for next year, but I just don't see me making it this year.
James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And James, I got to bring this up as well as we talk about Texas A&M. Earlier in the week, just having a regular conversation on the radio with Shannon, and she says, "My Aggie boyfriend." And I'm like, "What?" My Aggie boyfriend. James Allen, did you know this? Have you been holding out on me? Shannon Salty Sweeney, the biggest, most hardcore burnt orange Longhorn alum on the face of this earth, is fraternizing with the enemy and now has an Aggie boyfriend. Do you give your blessing to this relationship? And do you foresee Shannon, her boyfriend, you, me, and our listeners all enjoying a James Allen monster burrito at Fuego's anytime soon?
Well, we need to do that now that I'm kind of up and at 'em with the health. We need to go do that at Fuego's and have a James Allen thing. Yes, I did know she had a boyfriend from A&M.
Nobody told me, James, till this week on the radio.
Well,
I'm just saying.
I apologize for that. I didn't find out till last week, so if that helps.
All right.
So,
Seriously though, we're getting more and more of our listeners saying, "Hey, man, you guys are talking about Fuego's and the James Allen." And for people just tuning in, James has his own. Is it a burrito or a taco named after you, James? What's the official name of the food item named after you at
Fuego's? The one in
Fuego's?
Station is called the Veggie Monster. It's kind of like a big burrito. The one in San Antonio, I don't know. I haven't been there. I remember it was a listener that told me. I remember I broke the news. I didn't even know that they named it in San Antonio because Fuego's has a lot of franchises, and so I called the owner and I texted him and he said, "Oh yeah, we just thought it's just your hometown. Besides College Station, we thought we'd do it." And I thought that was so cool. And I didn't even your listeners is what broke the story. I didn't even know. So yeah, we need to go do that. Go to the one over by UTSA Boulevard and have it. It's a burrito, and as the owner said, it'll be on him. And let's go do a remote there. We'll bring Shannon's Aggie boyfriend.
Shannon, do you agree to those terms?
He might be willing to go as he is familiar with the Fuegos, having spent a day or two in College Station during his time.
All right.
I'll ask.
James Allen, we will work on that. James, as always, outstanding, sir. Love your perspective on the National Football League, especially on a day like this with this big Bruce Arians news. Thanks so much for taking the time. We will set up the Fuego's pilgrimage very, very soon, and have yourself a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for all the listeners. Shout out to your mom, Chris. Shout out to my mom and dad, which are listening, and my son, James Jr., who has huge academics, but also getting a ton of athletic scholarships. Couldn't be prouder of you. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.
All right. James Allen, thanks so much. Coming up, Andy Everett. Crowd goes wild for James Allen, as they always do. Coming up, Andy Everett, who, if he's not there, I imagine he'll be at the Valero Texas Open later today, if he's not already there. The latest on the Valero Texas Open and more. Andy's thoughts on Bruce Arians stepping aside as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lots going on. Don't go anywhere. We're with you till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. Our thanks to James Allen. Always outstanding. Oh, let me see here. Wow. Yeah, I thought I sent him. I'm looking for him right now. Again,
I checked this morning. Hey, I might have overlooked.
No, I looked at my sent emails and they weren't there. So now I thought they were the first ones I recorded this week. So and sometimes I screwed up a segment this morning. I got out a minute early. I attributed it to sleep deprivation on Spurs nights. Let me see. R&R. Gosh, I could have sworn. Let me find them. Yeah, there they are, April 4th, 6th, and 8th.
You did.
I recorded them, but I did not send them.
Okay, you didn't send them?
No, I did not send them.
Oh, all right.
No. I thought I sent them. So no, there I go again. Yeah, I'm glad you told me. 'Cause in my mind, I knew I recorded them, so I thought I sent them. So
okay, so this guy's driving a taxi cab.
Okay.
And
You want this to go out on Facebook?
That's
Okay.
So the passenger taps him on the shoulder, and the taxi cab loses control of the car, crashes into a wall, into a plate glass window. Driver turns back to the guy and says, "Sir, I'm very sorry. I hope you're okay. I hope you're not injured." And the passenger says, "No, it's perfectly fine. But I just didn't realize that a tap on your shoulder would make you go out of control and get you so startled." And the guy says, "Well, you have to forgive me, but for the last 25 years, I've been driving a hearse."
Very good. Thank you, sir. David Munoz with his morning jokes. We need to open a comedy club in here for him. Thank you, James. Great job as always, sir. I was going to ask you, James, we just ran out of time. Your take on the big story of the week, the Will Smith slapdown of Chris Rock. I know that was 4 nights ago, but continues to have traction. Yeah, Frank, I'm looking at the final 6 games for the Spurs. They got 2 against Portland. You would expect them to win both of them. If for any reason they let one of those get away, that's going to hurt them. Lakers are in a free fall. You expect the Lakers to continue losing. Lakers have a tough schedule. Lakers have 7 games left. They're at Utah, New Orleans, Denver, at Phoenix, at Golden State, Oklahoma City, and they close at Denver. Now, after the 2 Portland games, the Spurs schedule is tough. At Denver, at Minnesota. Minnesota's good this year. Home against Golden State, and then at Dallas. So you wonder if a tough loss like that on a final shot last night by Keldon Johnson that did not go in, you just wonder, is that going to come back to bite them at the end here? Hopefully not. But, can the Lakers keep losing? Will the Lakers turn it around? And as tough as this Lakers schedule looks, we're going to get to the point in the final games of the season where some of these opponents are going to be locked in to their playoff position and maybe not be as hardcore to win as they might have otherwise. So we shall see. There he is. There's Andy. Andy Everett is on board. I got to find my Andy Everett picture. Yeah, Pablo, you could make the argument about Lakers veterans. This Spurs team is playing a lot better than they have lately. And they've won 4 of their last 5, even with the loss. As you know, they had just won 4 in a row on the road. And darn near won last night. Where's my Andy Everett photo? There he is. Here we come.
Back to the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney.
Welcome back. Little Katy Perry for you in honor of Andy Everett. Christmas comes early for Andy Everett. He is our golf guru. He is not only the voice of UTSA athletics, but host of the golf show. And back when this was an afternoon show, pretty much every year we would do this show from the Valero Texas Open with Andy Everett. And as we welcome in Andy, a big thank you. Yesterday, my voice was not in nearly the shape it is this morning, and you were kind enough to join in and do the show with Shannon and Jeremy. So, Andy, thanks for being in here yesterday. I really do appreciate it. So, Valero Texas Open, this field, a lot of stars of golf in this Valero Texas Open field. Where would you rank the players from a star power standpoint compared to previous tournaments?
Down the top 20, and I'm not sure exactly how many of the top 20 are there, but there's a good number of them, and they've got them kind of spread across the golf course to some extent. Some of those groups are playing back-to-back today. I think Jordan Spieth and Matsuyama are in back-to-back groups. Lots of opportunities for people to come out and watch their favorite players.
Andy, I was at Dell Match Play last week, and one of the things I enjoy doing is going into the shop to see all of the merchandise. And I'm now looking at the merchandise that'll be on sale at the Valero Texas Open, and I'm really impressed. There's a lot of customized stuff with the San Antonio feel, kind of a fiesta feel almost, which would make sense given the time of year. But are you a big merch guy? And for these types of events, or is it just, you're Andy, you go to a lot of them, you don't need anything else?
Well, no, I'm not a big merch person for events like this. Now, when I go on a golf trip and I'm playing places that I've never played before, I'll usually buy a shirt or a hat, or in this case of Scotland, I probably spent a lot more than I could have or should have at some of the places I went when I've been over there before. But I really am not a big memorabilia collector, and I've got a couple of Valero Texas Open shirts. I don't know how I got them because I didn't buy them. I guess somebody gave them to me at some point. But the only problem with wearing a Valero Texas Open shirt during the tournament is people think that you are working and actually know something or where something is. So I usually don't wear them during the tournament because I don't know where anything is any more than anybody else does, except the first and 10th tees probably.
Andy Everett with us. Andy, you mentioned, I got like a two-part Tiger question. You mentioned Tiger Woods played the Valero Texas Open in 1996 and never came back, which I think begs the question, why did he never come back? And could there have been anything that organizers of this tournament in all of those years could have maybe done to entice him to come back? And then there's the Tiger Woods in Augusta story, and is it even conceivable that he could play the Masters coming up next week? So why didn't Tiger ever come back here, and what do you think the Masters prospects are?
Well, he came here in the fall of 1996, which, by the way, was a tournament that David Ogren won, and Tiger finished, I think, 5th that year. He was given a sponsor's exemption as his lead into the PGA Tour. And obviously played really well to finish 5th, and then ended up winning a few weeks later when the tour went to Vegas. It was a fall series event from then up until about 2006 or 7, I think, and then moved back into the spring. And it's for a long time it was 2 weeks after the Masters, and then there was even a year that it was in May, which really didn't fit into Tiger's schedule. And Tiger needed the Valero Texas Open in 1996. He no longer needed them after that. And that's not unusual for a lot of those players to make that decision. Tiger's always been a player that did not want a warm-up tournament before a major. His preparation was to practice at home, go to the site a few days before, get acclimated to the golf course, and really not be around the golf course on the Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, except for the obligated events because of the circus that was always around him. And when he would play practice rounds on Monday and Tuesday, he would do it at 6:30 in the morning because the majority of the people that were there didn't show up till 11, and he was home by then. And it wasn't that he didn't want to be around the people; it was just that it was not only about him, and it was just a circus wherever he went. And I heard Davis Love tell a story the other day that right after Tiger won the Masters, that's when he basically stopped hanging out with a lot of the players on the tour because he couldn't go anywhere with them. If he went to a restaurant to go eat with them, nobody would eat. Everybody would be clamoring around his table trying to get a picture or an autograph or whatever. But as far as him coming back to the Texas Open, they've tried. It's been in vain, and I don't think he will ever play here now, especially with the shortened schedule that he says he's going to play. I can't imagine going forward that he plays in more than 10 events a year, and doubtful that this one will be on it, especially when he does not like to play the week before the Masters. As far as the Masters is concerned, next week, he has been playing apparently this week at the Masters and walking. The last couple of weeks, he's been walking the golf course at home. So what it tells me is that if he can get out of bed on multiple days in a row and still walk, then he wants to play golf. And I would imagine over the next 2 days, he'll play a couple of more rounds. Most of the time you have to commit to a PGA Tour event on the Friday evening before that next week's event. The Masters, you don't have to commit till Wednesday night. And even if you're on the tee sheet as playing with somebody, in a group of 3 on Thursday, you can tell them on Thursday morning, hey, I can't make it, I'm not playing, and that group will just go off as 2. So the Masters doesn't really have a deadline until it's your time to tee off on Thursday. So he doesn't have to tell anybody if he's playing or not. But I would imagine that he would tell people he's not playing by Monday or Tuesday if he's not. Otherwise, I think it's all systems go, because I think he desperately wants to play again. He certainly wants to play in this tournament. But here's the other thing. He's not going to play to go out there and shoot 85 and wave his hat. If he's going to go out there to play, he'll feel like I can compete and maybe I even have a chance to win.
Well, Andy, that was what I was going to ask you, because we all know Tiger has that killer instinct. But given the circumstances, would there be any part of him? Obviously, he doesn't want to go out there and play just to play poorly. But even if he may, in the back of his mind, realize that there are other favorites to win the Masters and the green jacket, that he would still get out there just to have that victory of itself, of playing a full round of golf, playing in the Masters specifically, and doing so in such a short time compared to how bad that accident was just over a year ago.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think he wants to see where his game is in the heat of a tournament competition. And as he said, he could play weekend warrior golf for the last 3 or 4 months at home in a cart with his son. But can you do it at the PGA Tour level against the best players in the world on a golf course that's very demanding and hilly? And I'm told the long range forecast next week is great. They're going to have really good weather, so it's not going to be cold, and that should keep him, nice and loose and everything. So I think he wants to kind of give himself an idea of where he's at. But Tiger's not going to be this ceremonial golfer in the future where he comes to Augusta when he's 85 years old and plays, 18 holes and shoots 93, but everybody wants to see Tiger. He's got way too much pride for that. Arnold Palmer was that golfer. Arnold Palmer didn't care what he shot, and neither did the fans. And the fans won't care what Tiger shoots next week if he plays. They just want to see him play again and see him back out there. And it's a victory for a lot of people in and of itself for him just to play golf again at that level after the horrific accident 14 months ago. But that's not Tiger. And if he's not in a position to where he thinks he can play well enough to at least make the cut and be in contention on the weekend, he'll give up that spot and somebody else will play.
Andy Everett with us. My goodness, if Tiger plays at the Masters, what a big story that's going to be.
See, next Thursday should basically be a national day, holiday for everyone, because not only is it the first day of the Masters, it's the opening day of baseball. So I think everybody should get a pass to not do anything but watch that next week.
I am with you. Absolutely. Andy Everett with us. Andy, the Fiesta starts today in San Antonio. There won't be an Eric Church concert in San Antonio this weekend. We've talked about that. For people who, and as you've mentioned, in 34 years that you've covered it, this is the best field you've seen at the Valero Texas Open. For people who might be considering, maybe I'll go check it out, maybe I won't. Why would you suggest people head on out and go to the Valero Texas Open as a spectator this weekend?
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. One, you either have to like golf or you have to be with somebody who does like golf and you want to hang out with them. There's also, and I don't know what their ticket such situation is. I think there's still hospitality tickets available where you can get food and drink as well. I'm not sure if those are sold out or not, but I think tickets are still available. And it's going to be perfect weather. It's a chance to walk around and be outside and get exercise. And it's not TPC San Antonio is not an overly hilly golf course, but there are some challenging walks here and there. So stick to the holes that you can make it on. And if you go, say, you can go like down number 1, and then there's a little path behind the first green towards the 10th green, and so you don't have to walk too far. Then from the 10th and 11th, the 10th green, 11th tee, you're not too far from 16 and 17 and back to 18. So you don't have to walk a long ways if you can or don't want to. And then also there's the big concert Saturday night here with Jason Aldean and Darius Rucker. And I know there was a lot of people lamenting the fact that they had to make a decision on whether they wanted to buy tickets for that or for Eric Church. Well, now you don't. You can, use the money you got refunded from Eric Church to come out to that one. I'm very disappointed in Eric Church. I understand that your basketball team, your favorite team, is playing on Saturday evening, but to me, that's like if Tiger decided to not play in the Masters because Stanford was playing in some event. That's never going to happen. And professional athletes and professional entertainers put their craft first over everything else. And obviously, you could tape the thing, and there's a very little chance that anybody's going to tell you who won the game, and you could go right back into your trailer and watch it afterwards if you want to. But I would be very disappointed in that decision by him to cancel.
Totally agree on that, Andy. Andy will have the golf show. Got a feeling it's going to be very, very Valero Texas Open involved on Saturday morning, 8 o'clock on Ticket 760. If you're outside San Antonio, you can always get that as well on that free iHeart Radio app. Andy, always enjoy talking with you, but I can especially detect a little more oomph, a little more passion, a little more excitement in your voice when it's an event like this big, Valero Texas Open that is underway now in San Antonio. Always love your perspective. Thanks for taking the time. Have a great golf weekend, man.
Yeah, and don't forget those listening on Ticket 760, hourly updates start in about an hour to keep you up to date on what's happening through the golf tournament through Sunday evening. And
we will tune in for those. Thanks so much, Andy. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Andy Everett, our thanks to him. Our thanks to James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, who was just listening and watching on the live video feed. Shannon Salty Sweeney, who knew the Bruce Arians story was going to happen? We'll see what else pops in sports in the next 21 hours. And tomorrow, I got to give you my winning time review. I'm caught up like you are now on the TV series.
All right, Jeremy, you know what to do today.
I do know what to do today.
All right, we'll find out, Jeremy.
Yeah, let's discuss it tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Jeremy gets an extra day. Thanks to Shannon. Thanks to Jeremy. Thanks to you for hanging out with us. We will do this in 21 hours. Enjoy your final day of March. Adios. All right, y'all. We will see you mañana. Have a great Thursday. Bye-bye.